The story of the United States begins in 1607 when settlers from England established the colony of Jamestown in what is now Virginia. It was the first permanent English settlement in North America, but the land they arrived in was far from unclaimed. Indigenous peoples had lived here for thousands of years. They had cultures, governments, and complex societies. Colonization brought violence, war, and disease that decimated many of those nations. By the mid-1700s, 13 British colonies stretched along the Atlantic coast. They were part of a growing empire, but tensions simmered beneath the surface. In the South, plantations thrived on the backs of enslaved Africans, creating a brutal system of forced labor that would haunt the nation for generations. In the North, cities grew rapidly, and ideas of liberty and self-governance began to take root. When Britain won the French and Indian War, the cost was passed on to the colonies through new taxes. The colonists had no voice in Parliament, and their anger grew. Protests turned to resistance. In 1773, the Boston Tea Party signaled a breaking point in response. Britain cracked down hard, stripping Massachusetts of self-government. The other colonies took notice. Unity began to grow. In April 1775, armed conflict broke out at Lexington and Concord. The Revolutionary War had begun a year later. The Second Continental Congress declared independence. Thomas Jefferson, working alone in a rented house in Philadelphia, drafted the Declaration of Independence. It proclaimed that all men are created equal, with rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It was a bold and radical statement, grounded in the ideals of republicanism and fueled by the rejection of monarchy. George Washington was chosen to lead the Continental Army. Against all odds, his leadership and resilience kept the cause alive. Key victories at Trenton, Saratoga, and finally Yorktown turned the tide. With help from France and other allies, the colonists defeated the British in 1783. The Treaty of Paris recognized the independence of the United States. The early years were fragile. The Articles of Confederation created a weak government that couldn't raise taxes or respond to crisis. The economy suffered and unrest grew in response. National leaders gathered in Philadelphia in 1787 to draft a new constitution. They built a federal government with checks and balances, rooted in the belief that liberty must be protected, not assumed. In 1789, the Constitution was ratified and George Washington became the nation's first president. In 1791, the Bill of Rights was added, guaranteeing freedoms of speech, religion, and due process. But the young republic still faced deep contradictions. Expansion brought new land, but also new conflicts with indigenous peoples and over the spread of slavery. In 1803, Jefferson doubled the nation's size with the Louisiana Purchase, setting the stage for settlers to move west under the banner of Manifest Destiny. It was a period of rapid growth, but also dispossession, displacement, and bloodshed. As the 1800s continued, the divide over slavery deepened. The country prospered, but at a cost. When Abraham Lincoln was elected in 1860, southern states seceded, fearing the end of slavery. The Civil War erupted in 1861. For 4 brutal years, Americans fought each other in the bloodiest conflict in the nation's history. More than 600,000 lives were lost. But at Gettysburg, the tide turned in 1865. The Union prevailed and slavery was abolished. Lincoln was assassinated days later, and the promise of freedom faced fierce resistance. During Reconstruction, federal power was used to protect civil rights. But by 1877, white supremacists regained control of Southern government's Jim Crow laws soon stripped black Americans of their rights. Yet through all the injustice, the fight for equality never stopped. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the United States became the world's leading industrial power. Immigrants poured into cities, fueling factories and building railroads. It was an age of innovation and of inequality. Corruption and exploitation sparked the progressive movement, which pushed for reforms, workers' rights, women's suffrage, child labor laws, and the direct election of senators. The nation entered World War I in 1917, helping to secure victory for the Allies. The Roaring Twenties brought prosperity and cultural revolution, but in 1929, the stock market crashed, triggering the Great Depression. In response, President Franklin D. Roosevelt launched the New Deal, creating jobs, social security, and hope for millions of struggling Americans. Then came World War II. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, the U.S. entered the global fight against fascism. American forces played a decisive role in defeating Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. The war ended with the use of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, ushering in a new age of both power and peril. The United States emerged as a global superpower, occupying Japan and helping rebuild Europe. With victory came a new rivalry, the Cold War with the Soviet Union. The two powers never fought directly but clashed through proxy wars and arms race, and the race to space. At home, the civil rights movement took center stage. African Americans long denied the promises of the Constitution, organized, marched, and demanded equality. Their courage reshaped the nation. In 1991, the Cold War ended. The Soviet Union dissolved, and the United States stood as the world's sole superpower. But the challenges didn't stop. After the September 11 attacks, the U.S. launched a global war on terror. Wars in Afghanistan and Iraq followed, along with debates about national security and civil liberties. In the 21st century, the United States has faced a series of trials: economic crises, natural disasters, political polarization, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Yet through it all, the American spirit endures. A nation founded on ideals, not bloodlines, continues to wrestle with its history and strive toward a future of greater justice and opportunity. The United States was never promised to be perfect. It was built to be a work in progress. From the fields of Jamestown to the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, from the factories of Detroit to the front lines of Normandy, its people have faced hardship and hope, division and unity. And through each chapter, they have pushed forward. Because the story of America is not just one of power, it is one of perseverance. It is the story of a nation that dares to believe it can become better tomorrow than it was yesterday. And that story is still being written.